Hey guys, this is Mike, letusreason.com. Well, it's September again, and of course, the Rapture prediction circuit is in full force. As you might know, it's now become a thing that happens numerous times per year. And amazingly, just as soon as the so-called new wine Rapture predictions failed yet again this past summer, we now have many of the same exact Rapture teachers who pushed that, now moving their predictions to September for the annual Feast of Trumpets predictions, where they misinterpret Jesus's "no man knows the day or the hour" statement, which we're going to get into later in the video, to mean something that it doesn't even close to mean. In fact, it means the opposite. And of course, each time these people set a new rapture date, they act as if it's some kind of brand new thing that they're doing, try to make you believe that this time they have all their mathematical calculations correct, or maybe this time the stars and the planets are telling them the right thing, or whatever the case may be. Really seems like that old saying, there's a sucker born every minute, is much truer than you could ever imagine, because the same, I'll call charlatans, are playing the same scam on many of the same people, it seems, over and over, year after year, and they never seem to learn. So really, no matter how ridiculous these people act, some people still follow them. Exhibit A.
And we're back! I'm Mr. Bones. We are back. Oh, hey, Dr. Barry. How you doing? Anything new going on? Oh, well, just a supernatural occurrence, just a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Jesus literally told me the rapture is at the Feast of Trumpets. No more guessing, no more figuring. He said the rapture is at the feast. He called it Yom Teruah. It was like a close encounter where I saw the face of Jesus, and he spoke literally to me.
All right, now all jokes aside, if this is someone that you think you should be taking seriously on any possible level, I would seriously suggest that you seek the counsel of a solid Christian leader and commit to make some serious positive changes in your life. You may need some refining in the area of character judgment. But these are the kind of actual clowns that many Christians today are considering to be leaders on this topic. And predictably, each time their date-setting attempts fail, they just heap more shame, more dishonor, more embarrassment onto the church, onto the name of Jesus, onto the Bible itself, onto Christianity in general. And each time these things fail and people are disappointed, it discredits Christianity all over again in front of the world. Each time as these predicted dates get closer, we know that gullible, non-thinking Christians get all excited and caught up into it and start telling their family and their neighbors that the rapture is coming on this calendar date soon. And when it passes and nothing happens, you know what happens. Those same family members and those same neighbors are driven further away from the truth of Christianity. So you can imagine the thoughts that are probably going through their heads as they experience this. Like previously, they may have thought, hey, there was some truth to this Christianity thing, but after this, not anymore. Now you've convinced me that you are truly crazy. Great witness. We're called to be representatives for Christ on the earth, witnesses. So great job. You just did the opposite with your unbiblical date setting. And when the world sees Christians doing this, not only once, but year after year, now multiple times per year, they keep destroying their credibility even further until the point where you have no witness left at all, or possibly it's just a negative witness now. So great work. You just failed your actual commission given to you by Jesus to go out and spread the gospel truth. You made it now so that nobody's ever going to listen to you again or ever take you seriously or listen to what you have to say. Guys, that's the reality of what comes out of this date-setting nonsense each and every time. Nothing positive comes out of it. There's nothing edifying that comes out of it. There's nothing good that comes out of your witness to the world. Not to mention the personal damage that so many of these people themselves who follow this stuff experience. I've seen their testimonies myself. I've had people come and tell me how disappointed they've been so many times. They've written to me, they've emailed me, they've left comments, they've gotten their hopes up by these charlatans that it's ended in shipwreck for their faith. Or a lot of times it's they develop an aversion to even wanting to hear or think anything about the rapture anymore, because now they're associating the rapture with that nonsense. And they can't think about the rapture without feeling the pain, the hurt, the disappointment that they remember from all these constant experiences. And that's really a shame, because the rapture is supposed to be our blessed hope. So this is catastrophic, really, to imagine that people are being so turned off to their blessed hope because of these silly games that people are playing with gullible people's minds. It's not right. It's really a wicked and an evil thing to subject people to. Nothing good comes out of it. Like I said, it's always just purely destructive to the believers and to the church, which is why I actually believe that the people spreading this stuff are demonic. I'll say it. I don't care if you agree or disagree. I'm not really here for a popularity contest. It's true. And here's what I mean by demonic. You have to measure something by its results and its consequences, not people's intentions. You have to measure it by its actual consequences. And if the consistent results are repeated, often irreparable damage to believers and to the church at large, just over and over, repeated year after year, multiple times per year, and it's just constant damage, constant destruction, then you have to put the pieces together and figure out, who does that benefit? If it doesn't benefit us, it doesn't benefit our witness, it doesn't benefit the world in any way, it doesn't benefit the church, it doesn't benefit Christ, well, then of course it benefits our enemy, whose entire purpose is built around doing exactly that. Date setting, guys, it benefits Satan, our enemy, simple and plain. And if it benefits him and he loves the outcomes, to see people destroyed, to see churches split, to see people so having their faith just damaged time after time, then don't you think it makes sense that he would actually want to encourage and actually be behind and inspire this kind of behavior? Of course, obviously. So it's actually common sense that date setting is of the demonic, inspired by our enemy. And when we look at the history of end of the world and rapture date setting schemes down through time, that's what we always do find. Now, don't take my word for it. Don't think I'm just speaking hyperbolically or being extreme. No, go and research this for yourself. In fact, I'm going to take you through a very quick review of the history of date setting here before we actually get into the no man knows the day or the hour part of the video. So, the fact is that date setting has been practiced for millennia. It's not a new thing, but it's always been destructive. But I want to just give you some of the broad strokes and pick out a few of the many notorious fails. I'm sure that you guys know about many of these already. And actually, it's worth pointing out as we start that many cults or near cults, like the Seventh day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, groups like this, have actually come into existence through failed date setting attempts, through false prophecy. They actually find their origin in repeated date setting attempts and actual false prophets. It's a historical fact. Seventh day Adventism, it traces its origins back to the early 1800s when their founder, William Miller, made his infamous false predictions about Christ's return being in 1844, which resulted in a very well-known event in history called the Great Disappointment. Look it up. The aftermath of it was terrible, brutal. Some people lost their faith entirely. Others split into various Adventist denominations, each trying to explain why the calculations went wrong, why they failed. And the event sort of became almost like a cautionary tale about the dangers of date setting that should have lasted forever and should have informed future generations not to make that same mistake. But as we know, those who don't learn from history are often bound to repeat it. Enter Charles Taze Russell, founder of what became the Jehovah's Witnesses, who predicted Christ's invisible return in 1874, followed by the end of the world in 1914. Of course, when 1914 passed, the date was then moved to 1918, and then after that again to 1925. That's what you're going to see they always do. The Watchtower Society, or the official JW publication, has now claimed to have abandoned date setting after decades of these kind of failed predictions that just left so many of their Jehovah's Witnesses followers um, faithless and disillusioned. Although they did try something like that again, I believe it was in the 1970s. And what they often do is then say, oh, it really did happen, but it was just an invisible spiritual coming of Christ, not an actual physical coming. So it's a claim that can't be proven, but also can't be disproven, since it's just based on nothing at all. It's just invisible. Nobody knows. So you just have to trust the same people who have this track record of 100% failure and false prophecies. Who would do that? Well, millions of people, apparently. It's unbelievable. These movements were literally founded on false prophets and false date setting attempts. And yet today there's somehow huge movements with millions of followers. Sounds like the date setters on YouTube. And so keep that in mind, because it really answers the question of how on earth people keep following these YouTube date setters year after year when it keeps failing every year. A track record of 100% failure. Well, simple answer is people are drawn to false doctrine and deception and excitement and sensationalism. So then, as we continue here in the 1970s, something like this happened again. And this time it wasn't the work of the cults, but it actually happened within our own dispensational circles, unfortunately. This was Hal Lindsey in his 1970 bestseller, The Late Great Planet Earth, and it suggested that the rapture would occur before 1988. This was based on his misunderstanding of Matthew 24:32, which he incorrectly interpreted to refer to the generation that saw Israel's birth in 1948. And he made rapture predictions based off of that. The book sold over 28 million copies and really became one of the best-selling nonfiction books of the 1970s. But when 1988 came and went, Hal Lindsey quietly stopped making date predictions. By the way, it's worth pointing out, even Chuck Smith, unfortunately, the founder of the Calvary Chapel churches, made this prediction as well. Most people don't know that or don't want to admit it, but it's true. And there's several published books of his, although they're very hard to get, that make those predictions, all basing their rapture date on a misunderstanding of Jesus' statement about this generation in Matthew 24, the same exact error made by Hal Lindsey, and one that so many people today still believe. We'll talk about it later on. They totally rip that statement by Jesus out of context and try to make it be a countdown that began with Israel becoming a nation in 1948. And to this day, again, it stands as one of the worst examples of just horrible Bible interpretation, I think, in the history of dispensationalism. It's laughably bad. And I go into depth on that in many of my videos, but one specifically entitled The Fig Tree Fallacy. So you can look that video up for more detailed discussion of specifically that subject. And of course, we can't then talk about 1988 without mentioning the embarrassment to the church that went by the name of Edgar Whisenant, who published a book called 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988, which sold 4.5 million copies. And when that failed, he promptly released the sequel. Can you guess the title? 89 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1989. Yes, unfortunately, I'm being serious. The author, Whisenant, was a former NASA engineer, and he used supposedly complex mathematical calculations to allegedly prove that the rapture would occur between September 11th and 13th of 1988. The book was a bestseller. Christian bookstores couldn't keep it in stock. The demand was so high, flew off the shelves. And many Christians who were influenced by it quit their jobs. They were expecting the rapture so intensely based on these predictions. And families gathered together. They expected to be raptured at any moment. People got together and just dropped everything that they were doing. Of course, September 13th passed and nothing happened. But of course, Whisenant immediately recalculated his date, as they always do, moving it to October 3rd. So he thought he just had a couple of days off, and he just moved it ahead by, a couple weeks. But when that failed, he predicted it again now in 1989. So he moved it forward by 1 year. And then when that failed, he moved it forward again to September of 1993. And finally, when that didn't happen, he moved it to 1994 and then drifted off into obscurity after misleading millions of people and shipwrecking the faith of so many. Not to mention the damage to the credibility of Christianity. The destruction it caused to the body of Christ was huge back at that time. It was reported in Christianity Today that at that time, Wisenant's failed predictions, quote, did more to hurt the cause of Christ than anything in recent memory. Then there were the multiple failures of Harold Camping. I don't think any prediction received more media attention than his false prediction of May 21st, 2011, where he spent a huge amount of dollars on this Judgment Day campaign, as it was called. And he spent really all the people, not really just his money. He took money that people donated to him and spent millions on these kind of billboards that were all over the place, saying with mathematical certainty that the rapture would occur on that date. I remember seeing billboards even in Times Square in New York. And what do you think happened? His followers, like with Wisenant, they often sold their homes, emptied their retirement accounts. Many quit their jobs, donated all their money to him. Some traveled the country in RVs, warning that the end is coming, impending judgment is going to happen on that day. One example was given where a man spent his entire $140,000 life savings promoting Camping's message. There were many examples, though, of people doing exactly that, just destroying their lives and the lives of their families in the process. And then, of course, the predicted day of May 21st came and went, and no rapture. Harold Camping was hospitalized from the stress of it all. And when he got his bearings, he, of course, didn't apologize or repent or try to give the money back to people. He instead did what they always do and adjusted the date to October 21st of 2011. When that date also passed, he then finally admitted to being wrong and retired from the ministry in shame. But by that time, the damage had already been done. People were financially ruined. Children had panic attacks about the end of the world, and Christianity was mocked on the world scale. In the words of one former follower, he says, I had worked for 35 years and my whole retirement saved up. I spent everything supporting this ministry. Now I'm living with my daughter. Well, it sounds harsh, but you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So when you don't listen to Jesus, when he says nobody knows the day or hour and communicates the same exact message of unpredictability, suddenness, and signlessness over and over, and yet people just find ways to ignore or dismiss or just plain misinterpret it, that's what happens. And guys, there's so many others. These were just a couple of predictions. A couple more recent ones were the failed predictions of September 23rd, 2017. The Blood Moon Tetrad, 2014 to 15, where John Hagee's four blood moons theory proposed that lunar eclipses on Jewish feast days signaled the end times, despite the fact that this kind of activity happens very often on Jewish feast days. It's a lunar calendar. Then the so-called Revelation 12 sign in 2017. This was another big one, where a guy named Scotty Clark and others convinced thousands of people that astronomical alignments supposedly matched the sign of the woman clothed with the sun in Revelation 12. Of course, that also failed. And by the way, Revelation 12 has nothing directly to do with the church or the rapture, but instead is a picture of Israel in the Great Tribulation. Now, in more recent times, people have gotten savvier. These date setters have gotten savvier, more sneaky by learning from these mistakes. And no, I don't mean that they stopped date setting. They just got sneakier about it. So instead of saying it's going to definitely happen, they just include a little disclaimer saying something like, I'm not saying it definitely will happen on this date, but here's 23-hour-long YouTube videos giving all the reasons why I think it will. And they say things like, we're not date setting, we're just thinking out loud. as if the Bible tells you to think out loud and speculate about rapture dates. But no, if you select calendar dates, you're selecting specific dates and you're giving reasons why you think the rapture is going to happen on that day. That's date setting by definition, and it goes directly against the biblical teaching about the rapture. And over the past few years, as mentioned briefly at the outset, there's been annual predictions related to what I'll just call a fake biblical feast called the New Wine Pentecost that nobody ever heard of and was never mentioned anywhere in the Bible and wasn't one of the Levitical feast days. But this whole rapture prediction concept of a new wine Pentecost feast, from what I can tell, was invented by the guy I played a clip of at the beginning who talks to a skeleton. He calls himself Dr. Barry Awe. Please be aware of this person. Strongly mark and avoid him. And he has a number of tag-alongs, like a guy named Tyler on a YouTube channel called Generation 2434, which even the very name of that YouTube channel is a biblical misinterpretation that I actually alluded to earlier while talking about Hal Lindsey. It's a reference to Matthew 24:34, where Jesus mentions that this generation shall not pass till all these things, the things that he just finished describing, take place. And somehow Tyler and others like him think it's okay to completely ignore the context of that verse, which is the sequence of signs in the day of the Lord, which were all these things that he was referring to, and instead imagine that it has something to do with the rebirth of Israel in 1948. So they then conclude that one generation from 1948 is the window that the rapture has to take place. It's again one of the worst examples of careless Bible interpretation that I can think of. And again, look to my video, The Fig Tree Fallacy, for more on that. But he also promotes this new wine Pentecost rapture along with Barry Awe and another channel with a guy they call Bro Chooch and a handful of others, where literally the entire reason for the existence of their YouTube channels is to date set year round. They routinely will post videos also in a more general way at the beginning of each year, saying things like why the rapture could take place in 2025, for example, as if I needed a reason to why an imminent event can take place during 2025 or any other time. Clearly, they have no idea what the word imminent actually means. I could make the same exact video and it would be one sentence long, right? Why the rapture can happen in 2025. And the answer is simple, because the definition of imminent means it can happen at any moment. So I don't need reasons or a video as to why I can expect the rapture in 2025 or any other time, because it's always impending. There's no reasons why it can happen at any given time. It can always happen at any time. But thousands of people watch this stuff, unfortunately, and they have literally no clue that they're being misled like sheep and that the Bible teaches the direct opposite of everything they advocate. So I would strongly recommend against following these people. These are not sound Bible teachers. They're people to put on the pay no mind list. They're false teachers on the rapture subject, constantly spreading easy misinterpretations, just simple things that just read the passage, right? And you can see exactly what it's talking about. You don't even have to look into the Greek on these things. You don't even have to look at commentaries with a lot of this. You literally just, if you have simple reading comprehension, just read the passage. But they're constantly putting out these kind of misinterpretations, all used, of course, to support their views. And they literally just make things up as they go. And that clip that I played at the beginning was Barry Awe advocating now for a Feast of Trumpets rapture this September, in a couple of days, after he just pushed the fake new wine Pentecost rapture that failed again this summer for at least the second or third year in a row. But don't worry, he's going to dream up some new reasons to convince you that next year is the real year. And now he's got it all the calculations are correct. Guys, these people are shameless. But unfortunately, gullible people keep incentivizing this behavior by actually watching their videos. It has to stop. We have to stop going to these channels. We have to stop encouraging this behavior. These are false teachers who are bringing constant destruction and constant reproach to the church. You need to unfollow these clowns. Don't fall for the sensationalism and these wolves who are leading the sheep astray. These people should not be treated as if they're legitimate. They are not. They're dangerous and should be avoided. In fact, anyone speculating about rapture dates should immediately not be taken seriously and should be avoided. As I'll show you in this video, their whole agenda is to do exactly the opposite of what the Lord tells us to do. They're telling us to do what the Lord says not to do, specifically. They push against the way that the Lord set things up, where the date of the rapture is not intended to be known or figured out like some kind of a puzzle. And in fact, it can't be. Guys, the Lord does not want it to be known. He doesn't want us speculating about things that he doesn't want to be known. This is clear from the Bible. There is no gray area on this. I'm going to show you that as we continue. But why do these prediction schemes continue to draw people's attention and viewership? Why do people continue to flock to this stuff in spite of the fact that they failed 100% of the time and are going to continue to do so? Why do people fall for this over and over again, year after year? Well, here's a couple of reasons. And a lot of this comes from an article that I'm going to link in the description. I used some of it for the history that I went through earlier. And they all emanate from human psychology. So the first is confirmation bias. People desperately, guys, they desperately want to believe that they're living in the final generation. They want to believe the rapture is a week from Tuesday. They interpret current events through this lens. They see significance in coincidences or in normal events like wars and tragedies and social upheaval that have always happened throughout time. When has that ever not happened? But they constantly use it as a reason to say, well, we're in the end times. No, we're not in the end times. And the end times begins with the rapture. So if you're a pre-tribulationalist, you cannot believe that we're in the end times if you believe that we're still here. That's another subject for another time. But the second reason is authority appeal. Charismatic leaders with large platforms can very easily convince followers that their complex calculations or their spiritual revelations provide some kind of special insight, things that nobody else knows, secret information, hidden stuff. And now with the popularity of YouTube, anyone can grow such an audience with some catchy clickbait titles and a good thumbnail image. And the third reason is a sense of community belonging. People believing in a special date, specific calendar date, they create this sense of special knowledge and community with fellow believers who, quote unquote, understand what other people are supposedly missing. It's fun to get hyped up with people of like minds. So people are naturally kind of drawn to this communal aspect of it. And the fourth reason is control over fear. In uncertain times like we live in today, specific dates provide a sense of control and certainty about the future. So people feel like they're in control when they're afraid and they feel powerless about the direction of society, or they're concerned about where society is going. This gives them a sense of control. All right. The fifth reason, of course, is selective memory, right? People forget about all the failed predictions while remembering the excitement and the sense of community that they felt while they were believing in these things. So despite the fact that the entire practice is explicitly unbiblical and denounced repeatedly by Jesus himself and all through the rest of the Bible, people will psychologically find ways to convince themselves that it's not only acceptable to do this, but actually a very deep and very spiritual and very healthy and even recommended thing to do. So, what is the biblical psychology? What is the right mindset that we're supposed to have? Well, it's simple and maybe not sensational or exciting enough for some people, but it's very simple. You have to love truth and the word of God over excitement and sensationalism. Our calling, guys, is so beautifully simple. It's always be ready, stay faithful, keep watching for Jesus himself with a perpetual, ongoing sense of hope, not anxiety. And then when he does come, suddenly, unexpectedly, without signs, and imminently, at any moment, without warning, We want him to find us as faithful servants doing exactly what he told us to do while we wait for him, not doing what he told us not to do. We don't want to spend our time as perpetually embarrassed date setters, perpetually ruining our witness to the world and to our friends and family. Guys, the biblical mentality about the rapture is so simple. It's going to happen exactly when the Father determines, not when humans calculate or try to figure it out. And that's exactly how it should be. It's that simple. So stop fighting against God's will, since he told you explicitly over and over that not only don't we know or can't we know, but he explicitly told his own disciples that his righteous followers are not going to be able to figure it out. And it's in fact going to happen at a time we don't know. That's a basic characteristic of his parousia, his coming, the rapture, the beginning of the broad day of the Lord, that it's going to happen at a time we do not know. Matthew 24:42. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. Notice, please, what he says here, because I'm so tired of people saying that when Jesus says to watch, he actually means to date set or to watch for a sign or for a day. That's not what he's saying. These people think date setting is watching. But guys, read this verse. He says to watch because you don't know the time. So in other words, it's because the date is unknowable that you have to continually, perpetually, on an ongoing basis, watch for Jesus himself, not for some sign or date or calculation or astronomical alignment. The entire reason for the need to watch, which means to be continually spiritually prepared for his coming, that's what watching means here, is exactly because the timing is unknowable. You're not supposed to watch so you can figure it out. You're supposed to watch for him because you can't figure it out. So you have to be ready constantly. That's the point. Not to figure out a certain day that then you can be ready for that day. No, it's you have to be ready for him on an ongoing basis because he can come on an ongoing basis at any moment. And he specifically promises that it will happen on a day you don't know. Just read the verse. He says it's going to happen at a time we don't know. He doesn't say if you watch enough, you're going to be able to figure it out. No, it's the opposite. The need for watching perpetually comes from the fact that the timing is unpredictable, unknowable. It's so easy, guys. It's common sense. It's exactly what we would say today. And that's why Jesus also gives the analogy of a thief whose coming is never predictable. There's never signs of a thief. It's always sudden, which the word sudden itself means unpredictable, signless, without warning, any moment. It can just strike and happen, which is the total opposite of signs and predictability. And again, which is why the homeowner, in this example of the thief by Jesus, has to perpetually watch for the thief himself, not for some sign, not for some date, for the thief himself, the coming of the thief on an ongoing basis. There's no calculations. How can Jesus make it so clear and yet people interpret it to say the polar opposite? He gave you multiple analogies so that you can't get confused, and yet people hate truth. They want to believe what they want to believe because it's more fun. It's more exciting. Guys, it's a sad state of affairs, and rapture entertainers, as I like to call them, are taking advantage of people's gullibility and their natural psychological need to feel excited and all those other things that we just mentioned. It's wolves leading away the sheep into deception, and many people's faith gets wrecked because of it. People get burned out and they reach the edge. And of course they do. They're constantly being teased with the rapture. It's one of the most harmful things that you can do to people. It's a form of spiritual abuse, which is why Jesus said not to do it. It's not healthy for you. He told you it will happen when you don't expect, which is the opposite of a so-called high watch day, a totally unbiblical concept. Literally the opposite of what we were told and how we were instructed to await him. You need to await his coming biblically. You need to be in a state of calm and peace, while you await him, and stop trying to figure out what he said can't be figured out because he doesn't want you to figure it out. Guys, stay in peace, be in peace. Don't let yourself be fearful or anxious for anything. And know that the rapture is going to happen when it happens. If you're ready for it on an ongoing basis, if you're always watching for the thief, then you can't be taken off guard by it when it happens. It doesn't mean you're going to predict it. Okay. You don't need to know the date of something in order to not be taken off guard by it. How can I be taken off guard by something I'm constantly expecting? That doesn't mean I'm going to know the exact day or to pinpoint the time. That's not the point. He promises you, in fact, you can't do that. So again, there's just no benefit even in doing this. The only thing it benefits is padding the pockets of people who are selling books and having YouTube channels where they monetize your viewership or get you, develop a follower base predicated on this, right? So there's no benefit to you, there's benefit to them, but you just wait for him. And I promise you, he's going to come at the right time, period. There's no reason at all for you to obsess over the when, and nothing good can come from it. But what I want to do now is, after this sort of long introduction, I want to shift the focus now to addressing one particular misinterpretation of theirs that always comes up at this time of year, September, which is when the Jewish Feast of Trumpets falls on the calendar. And this phrase is "no man knows the day or the hour." And false rapture entertainers try to gaslight you into believing that this phrase actually means the opposite of what it actually means. Instead of meaning that nobody can predict it, they try to shift the meaning to the opposite, to be an ancient Jewish idiom for the Feast of Trumpets, claiming that when Jesus said this, he was actually saying that the rapture would happen on a Feast of Trumpets. So, in other words, instead of it being a statement of unpredictability, it's actually a statement of definite predictability, where he's telling you the exact day, and you just kind of have to figure out the year. This is what they're doing. But this is the danger of listening to people like these YouTubers, because it's literally, they twist it to say the opposite. So I'm going to show you in this video that "no man knows the day or the hour" is not an idiom that ancient Jews knew or were aware of, that they associated with the Feast of Trumpets. And nor was it used by Jesus to tell his disciples that the rapture would happen on the Feast of Trumpets. So first, let's address the claim that it's an ancient idiom that any Jew would have recognized as referring to trumpets. This is going to be an easy one, because the people making this claim, right, when you make a claim, you're obligated to provide the evidence for that claim. If this was such a widespread and well-known ancient idiom, then surely, of course, we must actually have at least one ancient source actually preserving this. But we don't. Or at least these so-called rapture teachers never present one. Guys, that's just not how we do scholarship or teaching. If you make a claim, you need to make sure that there's evidence to support that claim, especially if you're getting on YouTube, you're talking to the entire planet, you're writing books that people are paying for. You better substantiate your claims. You better show a reference. You better show a source. You got to prove it to us. Show us. Where's the ancient source for this, guys? Ask these people on these YouTube channels. Where is the source for this? Now, what they do is they mix in some truth with some claims that are unsubstantiated, and they hope that you're not going to really pick it apart and demand evidence for specifics. They talk about how in ancient times, in Judaism, the Feast of Trumpets was supposed to occur at the sighting of the new moon. This is true. The sighting would then have to be reported to the Sanhedrin with a reliable witness, and then once this was confirmed, then they would proclaim a start to the feast, and word would be sent to the Jewish communities in Israel and abroad. This is true. And since the Jews couldn't start their festival until the new moon was sighted and reported to the temple authorities, then because it sometimes took time for the news to travel to farther out Jewish communities, or maybe even because the weather was cloudy and the moon couldn't immediately be sighted, then for practical reasons, what ended up happening was trumpets became celebrated instead of a one-day feast as now being a two-day festival. Okay, this is absolutely true. Jews today will tell you this. There's no doubt about this at all. You can read about it in modern Jewish writings, modern articles. Just look it up on the internet. It's the Jews will tell you this. All right. Here's a quote from a Jewish website called My Jewish Learning, and it says this: the reason for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Teruah or the Feast of Trumpets being 2 days traces back to the way the timing of the new Jewish month was determined in ancient times. In those days, the new moon was established after 2 witnesses testified before rabbinical authorities in Israel that they had seen the new moon. After the rabbis had confirmed the testimony, word was sent to Jewish communities throughout Israel and beyond, because it took a while for the news to reach far-flung communities, and because other people would sometimes interfere with the communication system. The tradition arose of observing the major Jewish festivals for 2 days outside of Israel, just to be certain the holiday was observed on the correct day. This worked fine for most Jewish holidays, which began in the middle of the month. Rosh Hashanah is the only Jewish holiday that begins on the first of the month. So even in Israel, Jews could not wait until the confirmed appearance of the new moon to get word that the holiday had begun. Therefore, the tradition was established of observing Rosh Hashanah for 2 days, even in Israel. All right, so it's true that due to calendar uncertainties related to the sighting of the new moon, the feast became celebrated in ancient times as a 2-day feast. But what is not true, or I should say there's not evidence for, is the claim that because of this uncertainty, the phrase "no man knows the day or the hour" became an idiom associated with the Feast of Trumpets. It's just not true. There's no ancient source that says this. Not the Bible, not the Talmud, which is extensive, not the writings of the ancient Jewish sages like Rambam or Maimonides, or any of the volumes and volumes of Jewish Midrash and all these Gemara, all the writings that we have from ancient times. We have no testimony about this. So then we have no reason to believe it at all, much less to claim that this is some kind of well-known ancient idiom that anybody would have recognized. If it's so well known, why do Jews not talk about this today? Why is it not written anywhere? It's only date setter Christians that are talking about it, that are making these claims. As somehow modern Christians know something about ancient Jewish customs that modern Jews don't know? That's not recorded anywhere? Where are they getting this? Guys, if modern Christians are going to make this claim, we need to know where they're getting this from. This makes no sense at all. We need some kind of ancient source or ancient reference to this. We need some reason to believe that this is true other than these date setters just telling us it's true. And so this is just careless, unscholarly behavior by them. But who can be surprised? Because literally everything that they do would fit that description. Okay, so there's no proof to show that this is true, but I want to now show you from the Bible itself, from the very chapter where Jesus made this statement, that according to his very plain and very easy to understand message, he clearly did not mean that this phrase was a reference to the Feast of Trumpets, because the entire context and point of his message in this teaching and in parallel teachings in other gospels, and then repeated over and over throughout the epistles and Revelation, contradicts it completely. He gives you layer upon layer to ensure that there's no way that you can misunderstand him. And yet somehow these date setters still do, because it's consistent and repeated theme all through this part of the discourse. Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, when he mentions this phrase, no man knows the day or the hour, is literally that nobody can know the time of his coming. It's unpredictable. It's going to happen suddenly without warning. Just be ready for it. That's literally his entire point, that it's unpredictable, that it's signless, it's sudden, it's imminent. You have to be ready at all times because you don't know when it's coming. And he keeps repeating it in different ways all throughout this latter part of the discourse. And he uses different idioms to drive that point home to you, like the example of the unpredictable, sudden coming of a thief in the night. We talked about this a little bit before. So answer the question. It's very common sense. It's an easy question. Is the thief's coming unpredictable? Have you ever gotten your house robbed? Were you able to predict when the thief was going to come? Of course, the thief's coming is not predictable. That's the whole point of why he used the example of the thief to describe his own coming. And please, guys, please stop saying he's only coming as a thief to the wicked. No, he's talking to his disciples. He's coming as a thief to everyone, because the point is that no man knows, not even the Son of Man or the angels in heaven. Did you notice he says this also? We're going to read through it in just a couple of seconds. Is the Son of Man wicked? Are the angels in heaven wicked, unsaved? No, they're the epitome of righteousness. That's the whole point. Jesus uses an extreme, right? Himself, the angels in heaven, an extreme to express that if even he, the Son of Man, the sinless Messiah, as a man, right, God in flesh, if he could not know the time, nor could the angels, then you can't either. And the people you are following on YouTube cannot either. That's why he's speaking to his righteous disciples at the time, who were the believers at that point, telling them, you're not going to know, period. So if he really meant to say no man knows the day or hour is really some kind of a hint for you, in fact, that you can know because it's code language for the Feast of Trumpets, then why would he have gone on to mention the Son of Man and the angels not knowing? If the whole point is that you can know, and I'm giving you a hint, why would he express the unknowability, unpredictability of it by saying even the Son of Man and the angels can't know? It seems to me because his actual point is nobody can know. I mean, this isn't rocket science. All you have to do is listen to what he says. And why would he then be using the analogy of the coming of a thief to express the unpredictability of what he just said? If the whole point was to give them a hint that they could know, that it did allow them to predict it. Can you predict the coming of a thief? No, you cannot. Why do you use an analogy while teaching? To give a common sense, sort of like a word picture of what you're trying to communicate, in order to make sure that your audience has no difficulty understanding it. And everybody knows that a thief comes suddenly without warning or signs. That's a common sense, easy to understand analogy that's been true in all places at all times throughout history, regardless of culture. That's how thieves operate, and we all know it, which is why it serves as a great analogy to be to use when teaching. And of course, Jesus is a great teacher, so of course he would use that. Okay, I'm going too far into this without first reading the passage. So this is found in Matthew 24:36. We're going to read a number of the passages after verse 36 because they continue to present the same consistent theme and purpose for this latter half of the discourse. They expand upon the same point, which is obviously unpredictability. It's his whole obvious point. And he's going to give these different examples and usages in this passage, different idioms, different examples to, different language to show that neither the righteous nor the wicked can predict the timing. There's absolutely no way for anyone who can exercise basic reading comprehension to misunderstand this. Let's read. It says, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." So notice again, I have to hit on this again. He says, no man, no angel in heaven, nor even himself can know this. So again, it's not just the wicked. By very nature, he's telling you that a basic characteristic of his parousia in the Greek, his coming, is that it's going to take place suddenly, without signs, completely unpredictably to everyone. He continues, and you're going to notice some well-known examples of unpredictability to illustrate what he just said about the suddenness of his own coming. And this example that you're going to see next focuses a little bit more on the wicked, although he goes on to also discuss the simultaneous rescue of the righteous and the beginning of judgment on the wicked. That's going to happen when his coming takes place. It's simultaneous. The righteous are raptured, and immediately the wicked are left behind to immediately enter a period of judgment. And he says this, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. Until the day. Notice that. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. Did you notice what he just said? Watch therefore. Why? Because you know not what hour your Lord doth come. He's speaking to righteous people here, your Lord, because he is their Lord. He wouldn't speak to the unrighteous this way because he's not their Lord. So even the righteous won't know, which is the reason that he tells them to watch. Again, what do you mean watch? Watch for some signs so I can predict it? No, the opposite of that. Since there are no signs and it's completely unpredictable, you must continually watch for the Lord himself. And that's made 1,000% clear by this next example that he gives in order to explain it and expound on what he just said further. He says this, but know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in which watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore, be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Okay, guys, you can't confuse this. He uses the unpredictable, sudden, signless, any moment coming of a thief in the night to illustrate how his own coming is going to take place. And the whole point is that the homeowner is given no signs, no predictability for when the thief might come. That's how thieves operate. That's the whole point of him using that idiom. And it forces the homeowner to just be ready continually and to watch for the thief himself, not for some kind of so-called signs of which there are none. There's no high watch days. It can happen at any time. So he has to always be on the alert, always be watching. Now, although in the example, watching obviously refers to something physical, right? The homeowner's using his physical eyes to physically watch for the thief. But the message to you is not that you should be physically watching for something, but by implication that a person has to stay in a constant, continual, perpetual spiritual condition of readiness for the Lord and be faithful while you wait for him. Because just staring at the sky is not going to help you. We're going to talk about that later, but it's being in a spiritual condition that makes you ready. And that's explained further by what Jesus says next. He goes on to say this, who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give him meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find him doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he's not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. All right, now some people get confused on this because it seems to say that if you are looking for him, then you will be able to predict it because it's going to come in a day you're not looking for if you fall into sin. That's not what it's saying. The wording in the translation to the English can be a little bit confusing, but that's not at all what it's saying. Let's talk about it. So the message here is very simple. It's that faithfulness and good stewardship while you await for the any moment coming of your Lord is what's being taught. Being in a spiritual condition of readiness, a condition of salvation, because he can come at any time unpredictably and without warning. And if when he returns you are not ready, you get left behind to enter the judgment, just like the earlier example of the Noah flood, where it said that the righteous, Noah and his family, were rescued to safety immediately before judgment fell on those who were left behind. This is what happens at the absolute opening of the broad period of the day of the Lord, or what we call the end times. The rapture rescues the righteous church while the wicked are simultaneously left behind to immediately face a sequence of judgments that begins, the judgments that Jesus described in the first half of this discourse. Now, before we continue, I want to show you that in this discourse, Jesus himself told you exactly what he meant by watch. And it's exactly what I just told you. Spiritual readiness, or in other words, are you saved? Are you ready to meet him when he comes? Because physical watching for him with your eyes is not going to help you. And it's obviously not his point. Staring up at the sky until Jesus comes and you see him, that's not going to make you ready. His whole point is spiritual readiness and preparation. But he uses the obvious and easy to understand idiom of watching because it's common sense that watching for something implies not just staring at it, it implies being ready for that thing. Preparation. Why would you watch for something that you're not prepared for? Okay, the equation is very simple, guys. It's in verse 42 and then in verse 44. So watch this. He first says, "Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come." And then in verse 44, "Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh." It's an equation. He's saying the same thing twice. And the second time he's being more straightforward. This is very common in Hebrew and Greek speech, where you say the same thing twice in different ways. Watch therefore, for ye know not. Therefore be ready, for ye know not. See the equation? Watch means be ready. It's being used exactly the same. It's an expansion of what he means by watch. He means be ready. And the only way you can be ready for Jesus' return is by being saved, being in a spiritual condition of readiness, preparation. And so, why is he using this language of watch when he's not actually talking about a physical exercise with your eyeballs? Well, again, it's a simple expression that we also use today. He's saying that the perpetual awareness of his any moment coming should propel and motivate you into a state of spiritual readiness for it whenever it does happen. It's exactly what we do today, guys. If we're going to meet up to go to church and I say, I'll be by to pick you up in a little bit, just watch for me, I don't mean to just stare out your window. I really mean by implication, go and prepare and get ready so that when I come, you're ready to go with me. It means go take a shower, get dressed, comb your hair, be ready for church, eat something, whatever. Do what you need to do so that when I come, you're ready to leave. It's that simple, guys. If you're not spiritually prepared when he comes, you're not ready to leave. He's not teaching that there's something in the world that you're supposed to be physically watching for, and it has something to do with predicting the timing. Not at all. The entire point is always the opposite in all of these passages. Perpetual watchfulness for the Lord himself. Himself, not signs. And he's clear that there are not any. And by implication, it means spiritual readiness because that's the only thing that's going to help you when he comes. So he's explicit on this in this passage. He actually says it in the text. Watching means spiritual preparation, as we see in verses 42 and 44. And so his message is continually unpredictability all through this part of the discourse while discussing the timing of his coming. Let's go back to this passage just to talk about it a little bit more because it's confused so many people, where they ignore the whole part of the discourse up until this point, even though Jesus is clearly telling his disciples, his followers, the righteous, that nobody can know. And now when he's talking to the wicked who are unprepared, his wording here in the English confuses people because they see it as him saying, well, if you are prepared, then you will know it when it's going to happen, because it says that if they fall into a state of unpreparedness, then they're not going to know when he's coming. Guys, that's just another way of saying he's going to come at a time when they're not prepared, because he just said they're not prepared. So of course they're not looking for it. Of course they're not watching for him. And if we said watching means being prepared, then of course they're not saved and ready. So of course they're not going to go with him when he comes. So it's just another way of saying what he's been saying this entire time. When you fall into that state of mind where you're not even thinking about him, of course you're not going to be ready for him when he comes. Of course you're not going to be ready on that day when it happens. That's all it's saying. And it's not me just claiming that. I'm literally interpreting it in light of what it says all throughout the passage up to that point. You can't use that passage to say that the discourse up to that point doesn't mean what it says. You have to interpret that passage through the clear language and the clear message of the entire discourse up to that point. Because at that point, he's not introducing some kind of new truth. He's repeating and further expanding on what he's already said, which he's already used multiple idioms and expressions and analogies to communicate to you. So it should already be fully in your mind what he's saying when you get to that point. You can't use it to then say, oh, well, he's saying that maybe we can know it if we are prepared. That's not what he's saying. And guys, this same message doesn't stop there. He continues until chapter 25. This same latter half of the discourse continues into chapter 25, up until around verse 13, where he again repeats the same theme. This is not something that can be confused. It's black and white. He says this, "Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh." Matthew 25:13. So again, the message is actually a promise of unpredictability. It's a promise. And again, he's obviously speaking to his own righteous followers. Not only was this entire discourse literally speaking to his disciples in real time, but the wording makes it so obvious. And to make this even more clear, just look at the parallel recording of this in Mark 13. Jesus says, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is." So guys, it's the same thing, only in this recording he says watch and pray. Now, is he speaking to the wicked? Is he telling them to watch and pray? Of course not. He's speaking to the righteous, his followers. Praying is an activity only the righteous are known to do. The wicked are not thinking about him at all, which is the point. He's going to come on a day that they're not looking for him because they're not looking for him. So they're not going to be ready. That's what he just said before. And then he continues, "For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all." Did you hear that? I say unto all, watch. Guys, this is so straightforward. Again, he stresses that his servants don't know the timing. And look at what he says at the end. I say unto all, watch. He says that to all. He's speaking to everyone. And look at his reference to how he's going to come. Suddenly. He's coming suddenly for everyone. The difference is the righteous are prepared and ready, but the wicked are not, which is why he uses the the illustration here of sleeping. He doesn't mean physical sleeping any more than he means physical watching. Sleeping's an idiom for an unprepared spiritual condition, just like watching or watchfulness is an idiom for being spiritually prepared, spiritually ready. If you interpret one of these hyper literally, then you have to interpret them both that way. And that's just not going to work. If you're saying watching means physical watching for some kind of signs that aren't described here and are actually said not to exist because it's imminent, it's coming suddenly, then you also have to interpret sleeping hyperliterally. That would mean that anyone physically sleeping at the time Jesus comes gets left behind. Is that what you want to embrace? You want to advocate for that? Well, of course, that's not what he means. So again, it confirms exactly what I'm saying about watchfulness being an idiom for spiritual condition. That should be common sense, really. It takes rapture date setters to misunderstand something so basic and so easy. You're not going to go to hell for not watching if watching means watching their videos about date setting, right? Because then you have to say, well, post-tribbers are all going to hell. Doesn't matter. They're all going to hell because they're not watching for the rapture. No, they're not watching for the rapture because they don't believe it can happen until the end of the tribulation. So they're watching for things like the Antichrist because they're going to see that first, according to their view. So you would have to say, if you're taking this view of watchfulness to be super literal, to mean physical watching for something with your eyes, physical watching for signs, date setting, then you have to say no post-tribbers are going to be saved because the clear implication is that if you don't watch, you get left behind. So are you saying post-tribbers are going to be left behind? If the rapture is pre-trib, are the post-tribbers not going to be taken because they haven't been watching date setting? It's pre-tribbers that are doing all this date setting. So then watching is not literal. It's an idiom for spiritual preparation. It's so simple, guys. If you look at the way the rapture, the parousia, the beginning of the broad day of the Lord are portrayed all throughout the rest of the New Testament, you're going to see it. I do that in so many of my videos, so I don't want to be too repetitive here. But you'd see the same thing throughout the rest of Scripture. It's not just Jesus here in the Olivet Discourse. The New Testament then continues this same exact message of imminence, unpredictability, the beginning of the end times, when the rapture occurs, at the beginning of the parousia of Christ, which is the opening event of the broad day of the Lord. We're talking about the same moment in time, is always portrayed as sudden, signless, unpredictable, imminent, any moment, without warning, coming like a thief, coming soon, near, quickly, at hand, without delay, on the threshold of entrance. It's all consistent. If you go specifically to 1 Thessalonians 5, you're going to see this too. Paul, he explicitly, exactly, identically teaches exactly what Jesus said here in Matthew 24. 1 Thessalonians 5 has all the exact same idioms, all the same references that Jesus used here, all the same language. I could give you no less than 6 correlations that show that Paul actually got that teaching from this discourse by Jesus in Matthew 24, because it says the same thing. It's coming suddenly, like a thief. And in fact, he even says that the times and seasons, they don't even need him to write about because they knew it was going to be imminent and sudden and completely unpredictable from this detailed explanation by Jesus. They already knew that, he said. So he didn't even need to talk about the timing. And they could rest in the assurance that because they were spiritually ready, that day or the day of the Lord and all of its terrible judgments would not overtake them, because they would be rescued immediately before it begins by the rapture, which is the opening event of the broad day of the Lord. Which is why Jesus could speak of his coming as like a thief, and Paul can speak of the days coming like a thief here in 1 Thessalonians 5. It's the same thing. They're talking about the same absolute beginning point in time, what we call the end times. And Paul talks about the rapture, which he had just detailed at the end of the previous chapter, that he says that it's our comfort. So the fact that it's sudden and unpredictable should not cause you to worry or have anxiety or be stressed out, since you're perpetually supposed to be ready for it whenever it happens. And so, guys, the message is always the same: suddenness, without warning, imminence, any moment, complete lack of signs or prerequisites, no preconditions. It can simply happen at any time. It's simply overhanging and may befall us at any moment. That's literally what the word imminent means in the English language. Imminence is completely incompatible with setting dates. That's the consistent description, imminence. It's why people have always used this term in Christianity to refer to the coming, because that's how the Bible portrays it. It's completely incompatible with unbiblical inventions like high watch days and signs and predictions and any other form of date setting. If you deny that, then I'm sorry, you're just failing to grasp the definitions of words like sudden, imminent, etc., which are natural opposites from any of those things. And so if you're a person who's gotten tripped up on this subject and you've fallen into this date setting, my exhortation to you is to pick yourself up, make a decision to repent from that, learn what the Bible actually says, unsubscribe from the false teaching and the wolves on YouTube, get yourself into the actual Word of God. Actually, you're going to be amazed at how much time you're going to have to do the things that the Lord actually did command you to do. Because as I've shown in this video, speculating about rapture dates isn't one of them. He actually promised us the direct opposite, that the rapture is incompatible with date setting attempts. You're not going to figure it out. So I hope you found this helpful and a refreshing change from the regular nonsense clickbait that's so common on YouTube. And I would encourage you to leave a comment or question, drop a like, and it would be great if you subscribed and continue to walk this unpopular, narrow way journey in the Word along with me, where truth is our only goal. So thank you guys all for watching. God bless you, and I will see you on the next video.